Welcome to Mike&Jytte. Today's topic is going to be a bit of a surprise for Jytte. We've been talking a lot.
I'm very open. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, right, fun. We've been talking a lot about direct and indirect communication, and we've also mentioned the fact that oftentimes women use much more indirect communication and men use much more direct communication. However, there is an exception to this, and that is that men, when they're trying to avoid commitment, when they're sometimes dealing with delicate issues or they have negative emotions towards something, they will use, in fact, indirect, unspecific language. For example, they could say, if you ask them to do something, they would say, well, I'll look at that as soon as I can. You know.
And I would think that, well, you would look at it actually as soon as you have the time for it.
Yeah.
But
and
you might never
in
look
my
at
mind, as soon as can might be next year, right?
That's nice to know.
Or as soon as possible.
Because if I say as soon as possible, I'll put it on my list, and then when I have the time, I will do it.
Yeah, as soon as possible to me would be put on the bottom of the list. Now, if you are a woman receiving that kind of indirect or distance-taking language, then you can check it out by saying, well, what would your estimate be of as soon as possible? I mean, we're talking tomorrow, we're talking 20 minutes, we're talking 2 years, what are we talking about? And you'll find that if you push for that precision, that people will in fact, the men will in fact tend to get a bit aggressive because he's in fact avoiding it, right?
So I might say, when will that be? That'll be pretty direct. So I could use the indirect and say,
Absolutely.
when do you think that would be?
Yeah.
When do you think you will have time for that?
And if you keep saying as soon as possible, he's on the run.
Okay.
Right. And also things like I'll try. It makes them sound nice. I mean, I'll try to do that. Or we could talk about that next week. On this kind of distancing language.
It might be a good idea if we talk about it at the meeting.
Yeah. That might be a good idea, which means it's not going to happen, right?
Is that all the time you think, or is it most often?
It's the case that shows I'm not really committed to this.
But then again, if you hear me say the same, would you think that I would never do it?
No, I would think that a woman uses that kind of language. She is, in fact, using your standard form of language, and I would expect things to be done quickly or in accordance with her perfect value system.
So you would expect different from a woman and a man
using the same language. Yes.
So will you mow the lawn? You'll have a look at it next week.
I'll do it as soon as possible, right?
Interesting.
So I think it's this kind of indirect language you can look at from men use it, but they use it for different reasons. So it isn't always just men, women, but men use it more as a tool kind of thing to either avoid, to create distance, or to stall for time. Can also be done. But if for example, you invite me for lunch and say, well, can you come for lunch tomorrow? And you say, well, I'll try to be there. I don't think you should set the table before I get there, right? So a lot of these things, I could do it, it's possible to do it. I had to do it. Like a lot of men, they work maybe too many hours at the office, and they come home and say, well, I had to work today, I had to stay over today to work a bit longer. They didn't have to, they made a choice to do it. And oftentimes, this indirect language, when men use it, is a form of responsibility, flight from responsibility actually, where they were forced to do something and they don't take responsibility for their own decisions. So this kind of indirect language, be aware of it, and sometimes it would be payoff to confront a man with that, gently of course, because we're delicate souls, but do confront for something much more precise. How's that sound to you?
Yeah, that's interesting knowledge. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. And thank you.
Thank you.